Conventional wisdom says that we understand more today than we did 10 years ago, and vastly more than we did a century ago. Logically, it should follow that we're all geniuses compared to the people who lived in the distant past, but that simply isn't true. If we were, we'd be able to unravel all the ancient mysteries you're about to see in this video. A mushroom picker in Trove, Slovakia, was going about his business in late 2017 when he found some objects in the ground that most certainly were not mushrooms. After a little digging, he found himself staring at two perfectly preserved Bronze Age battle helmets, along with cheek pads and arm guards that would presumably have belonged to the same pair of warriors who wore these helmets. Very few helmets of this design have been discovered in Europe before, so historians aren't yet sure who designed or used them. The most likely candidates are the Urnfield and Hallstatt cultures, but there isn't enough solid evidence yet to prove the connection. They don't even bear a total resemblance to the helmets they've been compared to. Most plume-bearing helmets of this design are made from a single sheet of bronze, whereas these are made from two shaped bronze pieces connected by a central comb. What can be proven is that the headgear and battleware are around 3,200 years old, making them an extremely fortuitous discovery for that lucky mushroom picker. They are now on display at the Eastern Slovakia Museum in Košice. In 2018, a man was out walking with his dog in the Orlica Mountains close to Kostelika Horky in Czechia when the dog ran off, seemingly distracted by something in the undergrowth. When the owner caught up to his dog, he found that it had dug up a bronze sickle. That was enough to persuade the owner to join his pet in the digging exercise, and by the time they were done, they'd unearthed a further 12 sickles, 7 bracelets, 3 axes, and 2 spears. He quickly headed to the Orlica Mountains Museum in nearby Rychnov and showed his newly found collection off to the experts, who were able to tell him that he'd stumbled across a treasure collection that's more than 3,000 years old. They're the only artifacts from this era to be found in the region since 1953, and their value should not be underestimated. The best guess of archaeologists at the museum is that they were buried as either a tribute or a sacrifice at the site of a fallen warrior, although confirming that would necessitate the discovery of a grave close to the site. So far, that hasn't happened. We're heading to Denmark now for a story about an amateur metal detectorist. This treasure trove was found in a very muddy field on the Danish island of Hjarno, close to Horsens, over a 3-year period that ended in September 2020. Most of the artifacts are ornate items of jewelry, many of which are either made from solid gold or include valuable pearls. Pendants, a gold needle, beads, and gold fragments that were used as a form of Iron Age currency are also included in the hoard, which professional archaeologists say is about 1,500 years old. Metal detectorist and dental assistant Therese Refsgaard found the first of the artifacts in spring 2017, and then returned to the site several times over the following years to add to the collection. She now thinks she's found everything there is to find in the field. The gold comes from a time just before the beginning of the Viking era in Denmark, and features patterns and designs that historians have never seen before. Some of the patterns are similar to those found on gold items in the Rome of the time, so there might have been more contact between Hjarno and the Roman Empire than we're currently aware of. There was much excitement in Ordu, Turkey on the Black Sea coast in 2016 when a stunning 2,100-year-old marble statue turned up during excavation work in the area. This sculpture, which looks a little battered and discolored from its long burial, is a representation of Cibil, the ancient Phrygian mother goddess of the earth. It may only be 3.5 feet tall because it shows Cibil as pregnant and sitting down, but it weighs an impressive 450 pounds. The site of the discovery is the ancient fort of Kurul Kaleshi, which is understood to have collapsed during an attack by Roman soldiers. In 2018, the original statue was joined by 2 more found in almost exactly the same location. This time, the statues were representations of Pan and Dionysus. While the Romans may have been responsible for the fate of this fortress, they didn't found it. It already existed by the time Homer wrote the Iliad, as he mentioned it by name. Indeed, by attacking the city the way they did, the Romans may even have been responsible for preserving these stunning statues and all the other archaeological wonders that have been found there. While many of the ancient Mayan monuments and settlements in Mexico have been fully explored, the same can't be said about those in Guatemala. Archaeologists have spent the past few years trying to do something about that, though, and in the process, they've made amazing discoveries like this intricately decorated 1,500-year-old altar. It was found in a ruined Mayan temple in an area almost completely hidden by the Guatemalan jungle near La Corona. Excavating the altar from the tree root that had wrapped around it and exporting it to Guatemala City was a painstaking process that took almost a full year. The limestone altar bears the image of King Chactuc Ichac, who was previously unknown to historians. He carried a double-headed serpent in his hands. The presence of the snake is probably tied to the Maya dynasty of Kanul, who were known as the Snake Kings. There are even hieroglyphs on the altar that give the precise date of May 12, 544 for its installation and dedication. Having found evidence of the existence of this long-forgotten king, archaeologists are now looking for a further historical context to his reign. The Saqqara necropolis in Egypt is enormous. It's also one of the busiest archaeological sites in the world, and is likely to remain that way for many years. It's a work site, but parts of that work site are open to the public. And in September 2018, the tomb of Mayu joined their number for the first time. The delay between discovering the tomb and opening it to visitors was a long one. The tomb was found in 1940. Mayu wasn't a pharaoh, but a vizier. He served in the court of the pharaoh Pepi of the 6th dynasty, who lived 4,300 years ago. As such, Mayu would have held great power and influence. That explains in part why his tomb is so grand. It's enormous, and it's in a prestigious position not far from the Pyramid of Djoser. Upon the walls of the tomb are inscribed Mayu's many titles. He had no fewer than 48 of them, including head of the juries and scribe of the royal documents. In addition, another inscription references Khenti Amentiu, a deity who was a forerunner of Osiris. This is the first evidence that Khenti Amentiu was worshipped in the Nile Delta as well as Upper Egypt. What began as a mild fright for a farmer on the Greek island of Crete in November 2018 quickly turned into an archaeological delight. The farmer had parked his truck beneath an olive tree on his property when the ground gave way, almost sinking the vehicle in the process. He managed to drive the truck away, but upon returning to inspect the hole, he realized he'd inadvertently broken into an underground chamber. He'd later find out that he was the first person to see the inside of the chamber in 3,600 years. He'd found an ancient Minoan tomb carved directly into the soft natural limestone, and the tomb contained a pair of clay coffins, each containing the skeleton of a male. The quality of the funerary vases around the coffins suggests that both men were of high social status. No other tombs of this quality are known to exist in the vicinity, and most of those that exist elsewhere were looted long before archaeologists found them. This one was untouched, which makes it unique. Some Greek historians used to think that the Minoans settled in the plains and lowlands of Crete, and never came in as far as Ierapetra, which is where the tomb was found. But they've now been proven wrong. Our next discovery was made at the spectacular site of Dunaveg Castle on the Isle of Islay, Scotland. It's the seal of Sir John Campbell of Cawdor, who became a huge figure in the castle's history after taking control over the island in 1615. We're not sure why he dropped his seal, but it was found trapped under mounds of rubble from a collapsed wall in August 2018. Sir John would have once used this seal to sign legal documents, seal charters, and prove his identity. It's made of lead, contains his full name and his coat of arms, and is marked with the year 1593, indicating that he started using it long before he arrived on the island. The Campbell clan and the MacDonald clan fought over the castle many times in the early 17th century, but it was the Campbells who finally came out on top, with Sir John as the head of the family at that time. The MacDonalds attacked again 30 years later and eventually took the castle back in 1646. It's possible that the seal was lost then as the wall collapsed, but Sir John would have been long dead. A legendary treasure was discovered on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast in August 2018 when more than 1,000 gold and silver artifacts were found inside a clay pot in Kaliakra Fortress. It's thought that this is a collection of loot built up over time by a Tatar leader who was himself eventually defeated by the Ottomans somewhere around the beginning of the 15th century. The fortress has long been an area of archaeological interest, as it's been held and fought over since the days of the ancient Thracians 2,400 years ago. This particular set of treasures probably comes from the final invasion of the Balkans by the Tatars. It contains more than 900 gold and silver coins, 2 gold rings, 11 gold earrings, a set of gold buckles, 30 silver and bronze buttons, and a few precious stones. Most of the coins are Ottoman in origin, but there are a few from the Second Bulgarian Empire. The pot appears to have been hidden deliberately at the end of the 14th century to protect it from Ottoman advances. It turned out to be so well hidden that it took archaeologists a further 500 years to find it. Africa is generally regarded as the cradle of human life. So when archaeologists say they've found the oldest cemetery in East Africa, it's a story worth hearing. The finding of the cemetery was confirmed in August 2018, close to Lake Turkana in Kenya. Experts believe that it was established by herders who lived around the lake more than 5,000 years ago. The location has been named the Lothagam North Pillar Site, which is every bit as accurate as it is unimaginative. At the center of the site is a platform almost exactly 100 feet in diameter, featuring a large funerary cavity. After around 700 years of constant use, the cemetery became completely full and was capped with stones before being topped with pillars. Further stone circles and cairns were then added around the platform for later burials. Scientists have been able to identify almost 600 individuals buried within the cavity, many of whom were buried with stone and mineral grave goods, including colorful beads. It doesn't appear that any of the individuals were buried with any greater ceremony or grandeur than any of the others, indicating that there may not have been a strong hierarchy in this ancient society. When this gilded Roman horse's head sculpture was found on a farmer's land in Germany in 2009, the farmer thought his luck was finally in, and he was about to become rich. He was left disappointed when the state of Hesse paid him a mere 48,000 euros for the discovery, so he decided to contest the amount. It took until 2018, but his persistence finally paid off. The life-sized head is all that remains of what would once have been a much larger structure that once stood outside a Roman fort outside the town of Waldgirmes. Archaeologists believe it to be a relic of the year 7 CE, and think it was most likely a statue of Emperor Augustus riding on horseback. The fate of the rest of the statue is unknown, but it might have been destroyed by Germanic tribes after the Roman defeat at the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. Dismembering the statue would have been a symbolic representation of the defeat of the occupying forces. After hearing testimony from archaeologists, a judge decided that a more appropriate reward for the farmer would be 773,000 euros. We tend to think of climate change as a modern problem, but some recently discovered stone reliefs in Peru have suggested that our ancestors were dealing with it 3,800 years ago. The carvings were found in what was once a fishing city belonging to the Corral civilization, but appear to depict the problems brought around by a prolonged period of drought, which in turn led to a famine. The wall relief, which is 3 feet high and 9 feet long, has been found in the Vichama Archaeological Site around 70 miles north of Lima, Peru's capital city. It was probably once part of the entrance to a grand ceremonial hall. Some of the carvings are of snakes, which represented water gods to the Coral people. Close to the snakes are human figures, which seem gaunt and emaciated. The overall opinion of scientists is that the Coral people were either trying to appeal to the water gods to bring back the rain, or were documenting the struggles they were facing as a form of historical record.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!